Alright, before I begin, just a quick poll. How many of you here think that science and maths should be taught in English? Show of hands. Okay, I see quite a large number of hands. Alright, thank you. How many of you think that science and maths should be taught in Malay? Oh, not a single hand. Oh, is that one hand? Alright, and how many of you think that science and maths should be taught in vernacular languages like Mandarin, Tamil, Iban, Kadazan? Okay, I see a couple of hands too. Thank you. Alright, I was a teacher, and one of my greatest fears as a teacher was that I would ask questions to my class and no one would answer, and they'd just stare blankly at me. So thank you. That's been really encouraging. Before I get back to that question earlier, I'll share a bit of my story. How I, as a bad student, ended up becoming a teacher, and how as a teacher, I ended up in the board game industry. So my story starts with this picture. I used to be really bored at school. Don't tell my mom this, but I slept through a lot of my schooling life, from primary school all the way to university. I never really liked school. I never understood why we had to learn so many subjects, why we had to sit through so many examinations. I was 15 years old when our English teacher told our class to write a journal. I thought this was a complete waste of time. This was a boring assignment. So I decided, since I have to do it, let's have fun with it. I wrote about how schools were terrible, how much schooling sucked. I wrote about things I read in the newspaper, like the story of David Beckham. There was a story that talked about how David Beckham struggled with his son's kindergarten math homework. But yet, David Beckham was earning ridiculous amounts of money. How ridiculous? In 2016, it was reported he earned 71,000 British pounds in a day. For those of you who are interested, that's 380,000 ringgit a day, or about 11 million a month. I'm sure many of us don't even earn 380,000 ringgit in a year. Here was a guy who couldn't do kindergarten math homework, and yet he was earning so much money. So I wrote in my journal, why do we go to school? Why do we have to learn math? What if I want to be a musician? Why do I have to learn geography? What if I want to be a chef? Why do I learn history? And being a typical Malaysian, I complain and complain and complain and complain. But then I came across a line that really shaped my life's trajectory. If you complain a lot about something, it means you care for something. And if you care about something, then you should do something about it. After all, we don't really complain about things we don't care about. This line really stuck with me because I realized it was so easy for me to keep complaining about how schools were terrible. I studied business in university, and instead of writing about business topics, I wrote about the mismanagement of the Science and Maths in English program, or otherwise known as PPSMI. There was another free topic paper where I wrote about how we should do away with compulsory schooling. This was supposed to be a 2-page assignment. I wrote about 10 pages, and I wasn't even close to being finished. And I realized, it's so easy to complain. And if you complain a lot about something, then maybe you should do something about it. So, I decided to become a teacher. I signed up for the Teach For Malaysia program, and I was posted to teach in a local secondary school in Sarawak for 2 years. I taught history over there, and being a kid who grew up in KL, I saw a part of Malaysia that I never knew. It was an amazing journey, and I made some amazing relationships there with the other Teach For Malaysia fellows, one of them being my fiancée who's here today. So these relationships were developed through spending lots of time together. And it's one of those nights where we got together as fellows and we decided to play board games. And one of the fellows said, hey, let's play my board game. And I immediately looked at him, your board game? It's probably those, in my mind I thought it would be those drawn on paper, or maybe you print at home, crudely designed. But when he first brought it out, I saw this was something that was well crafted, well designed, and sent to a proper printing shop. And I thought, wow, I never knew that you could do something like this. He went on to explain this was his college assignment where he had to take a real life inspiration and create a physical representation. And my first reaction was, wow, why don't we create a game about our life as teachers? We have amazing experiences, all sorts of funny things that happen in our life, and those will make for great cards. So we laughed and we talked about the cards that we could create. Like the Tai Chi master, the teacher that no matter what comes their way, they are amazing at delegating or pushing away duties and responsibilities. And I'm sure whether you're students or you're working, you all know that someone who's a Tai Chi master. Or we talked about that parent, the parent that we'll never be good enough for. We talked about the parent that always would march to school and complain to us about how we are doing our jobs wrong and how their kid is always right. We laughed and we talked, and it took about a year before we came out with our first prototype, which looked a bit like this: paper stuck on poker cards, paper drawn. And then we decided to refine it a bit more, which didn't look much different, to be honest. And then we were fortunate to win a grant, and that helped us to create something that looked a bit more legit. I think one of the high points of creating this game was when we got our deputy minister to buy a set. And they say, we look like brothers, right? So, what is the Cikgu Life? It's pretty simple actually. The game that I just shared with you, every player takes on the role of a teacher. Your goal is, you start with 5 students at grade F and you have 5 paperwork. Your mission is to get 5 students to grade A and clear your paperwork. Sounds straightforward, right? That's what one of our early play testers told us. But as you play the cards, every card you play to help your students go up grades, you realize your paperwork slowly starts piling up. And when you try to clear away your paperwork, you realize your students aren't going anywhere. Or maybe you're doing well, your students are moving places and your paperwork is going away. And then things happen. Like the new curriculum, through no fault of your own, you get more paperwork. Or maybe natural disasters. Things that we used to celebrate as students, or at least I did, because this meant no school. But suddenly, as a teacher, you realize you can't really move forward. Or maybe, just maybe, your students are getting close to grade A's, or maybe they're even at grade A, and through no fault of your own, they get expelled from school. And it seemed like so many things are getting in the way of achieving excellent education. A lot of our playtesters, a lot of our players got really frustrated and asked, why is the game like that? But it's different. It's different when you play with teachers. Every card a teacher plays carries a personal story. Every card they play, they'll tell you of their life. They'll tell you of the nights they spend adapting to the new textbook. They'll tell you of the weekends and holidays they spend marking exam papers. They will tell you of the time when their students got expelled due to drug abuse. They'll tell you of the time their own students passed away from illegal bike racing. I love the moments when teachers play with non-teachers and non-teachers go, wow, I never knew teaching was this difficult. Back when we were teachers, it was really hard to talk to other people. All we talked about all day was school and students. But through the Cikgu Life, what started out as a fun project slowly evolved into a game, a platform that created meaningful conversations between teachers and non-teachers to create a common language and to create empathy. Earlier I asked what language we thought science and maths should be taught in. Take a moment to think, how many of us have actually done research on this topic? How many of us have spoken to a diverse group of teachers and students on what exactly they go through and what are the difficulties they face? By the way, research has shown that learning technical subjects such as science and mathematics in a non-native language actually impedes thinking skills. But it's not like any of us had bad intentions or we are out here to create a terrible education system. That wasn't the case. But it's easy to propose solutions based on our personal assumptions. It's easy to solve someone else's problems. It's easy to come up with the ideal education system, whether we should have more exams, less exams, more subjects, more STEM subjects, more creative arts. Maybe we should look to Finland, or maybe next door to Singapore. It's always easier to solve someone else's problems. But true problem solving actually requires a lot of grace. Requires us to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and to see the world from their perspective. There's an amazing story of the time when AirAsia transitioned from using Boeing planes to Airbus planes. Back when they were using Boeing planes, luggage bags used to be loaded manually onto the planes. When they transitioned to Airbus planes, this became a lot more difficult. So the workers decided to say, hey, let's request to buy some belt loaders. And the cost came up to about 5 million ringgit. They submitted it to their boss, and the CEO of AirAsia, Tan Sri Tony Fernandez, immediately said no. But Tony is also one of those bosses that often get up from his office and go and work together with his staff. It's one of those shifts when he decided to load luggage bags together with his staff that he realized this was really difficult. He immediately sanctioned the purchase of these belt loaders, and in his own words, he said, if I hadn't gone down to the ground that day, a lot of bodies would have been destroyed. Part of the reason I joined Teach For Malaysia was I wanted to see schools from a grassroots level. I wanted to see things from a teacher's perspective. Before I became a teacher, I had a lot of assumptions of why schools didn't work. And I thought I had all the solutions. Of course I did. Then I became a teacher. Then I realized problems aren't always as straightforward as it seems. When you play the Cikgu Life with other teachers, you hear of their personal stories of how great policies, and Malaysia has really good policies. If you read the National Education Blueprint, you realize it's an amazing document. But these great policies don't often translate down to the ground. And a lot of everyday issues that actually impede a good education goes unaddressed. And it can be problems as simple as taking attendance. After my 2 years of teaching and 2 years of dabbling in a board game, the one thing I've learned is this. It's never about having the best solutions. Social change requires that we first seek to understand, to see, to hear, to feel, and to understand what others go through. But more importantly, to work alongside people and slowly work at a problem bit by bit, working alongside them every single day until the problem is solved. Social change requires a lot of empathy. The question is, will we strive for empathy? Thank you.